There are lots of assets already existing in Animate that you can experiment with. So for instance, here under Window you have Assets. Now your assets, let's just put that there. Your assets allow you to work with existing clips. So for instance, there are sound effects that you can add, and there are static objects that you can take and then attempt to animate. And then there are animated things. So for instance, you have characters, animated characters, backgrounds, and so on. And then you also, in addition, have what's called rigging. Okay, so if I put in the characters and look at the rigs, you'll see there are sort of template movements that you can apply to some of the characters. Now, it's a little bit complicated. The characters here, get out of this, the characters here are all animated characters, whereas the static characters are waiting for you to apply a rig onto them. So those rigs that I showed you a moment ago in the animated section, they are animated rigs, and you can drop the appropriate rigs onto the appropriate cartoon images. So the first thing is these are online, and I think when you use them, you've downloaded them. So from time to time they change. From time to time they completely disappear on my computer, and that may be because of my internet connection. So don't worry if yours doesn't look exactly like mine. I can already see some new ones from yesterday. So let's find an animation just to work with. I'm just going to pull it out onto the stage. Now, of course, this is supposed to be a running bear. We get a preview of it, but when I preview it on the screen, nothing happens. So the reason is because it's at the moment static in a single frame. I need to put some motion into that frame. So I'm going to go back to Properties, make sure I've selected the frame, and then I'm going to put on a tween, either a classic tween or a motion tween. And now if I test it, you'll see the bear runs. So of course I could either have a landscape behind the bear moving, or I can animate the timeline of the bear and have the bear moving across the screen. So I'm going to just put the bear inside the aquarium. So I'm going to delete that layer. When I bring the aquarium over, it will make its own layer. And I'm just going to make sure that it's underneath the bear and that it's much, much bigger than the stage. So in fact, I'm going to increase it quite a bit. Let's have it over here. I'll have the bear running across the top. Okay, not going to be perfect, but just to give you the idea of the effect, I'm going to take the timeline. So I'm going to say to the aquarium it's going to move. I'm going to put on a motion tween, and then I'm going to put in a final keyframe. I'm just going to move the aquarium across, and then preview, and you can see the bear is now running across the aquarium. So you can put in your own backgrounds, and you can use photographic images. You could create a drawing. Even a simple line just along the screen, a wobbly line, will give an illusion of the horizon line. So there's lots of other things in there. There's a few backgrounds. There are all the props that you will see in the animation tutorial videos. So everything is in here for you to work with. Now, a couple of other interesting things here. You have static characters. Okay, so all these characters here, if I bring them out on the stage, they don't do anything until I apply a rigging on top of them. Okay, So I'm going to bring out a little college girl. And then I'm going to go up to the animated section, but I'm going to look this time just for the rigs. So I'm going to look for rigs here and see if I can get a walking sequence. Now you're going to drop that on top of her, but not on the stage. You have to be inside the animation itself. So I'm going to double click, and now I am in movie editing mode, and I can drop the walk onto the character. Okay, so now I'm going to play it, and you can see now she's walking. So we have the same kind of illusion as the bear. Click the arrow to come out of movie editing mode or symbol editing mode, and then you can see she's just on the stage. So you have to match the right character with the correct rigging. So for instance, this tall boy, if I go into the animated section, we could, for instance, make the tall boy stretched. I'm going to double click on and then drop the stretch mechanism, and then you can see we can animate him like that. You might notice everything is compressed into a single layer with these animations, but I can show you that, for instance, if we take everything on the stage, I can distribute it to layers, and you'll actually see that each part of his body is a unique and separate body. And there are a few ways in Animate that you can work to actually manipulate these bodies. So these rigs are the framework, the bone structure, if you like, which holds all those parts together during the animation. The final character that I want to show you is, again, static characters. And again, you can work with any of the plain static characters. So I'm going to bring her onto the stage. This is Hello Kid. Resize her. And then I'm going to drop this rig. Now, this is not in the animated section. This rig is not animated. So this is just the bony structure that you can use on your animation. Of course, I need to double click the drawing to go into symbol editing mode up here. So if I click the arrow, you'll see we're back on the stage. Double click and we're in symbol editing mode. And I'm going to drop that rig on top. I'm going to extend the timeline by adding a keyframe, and then just decide what's going to happen along the timeline. So for instance, if I want to make her wave, I decide where I'm going to put the keyframe, and then just make sure that you're in the selection tool. And as you approach, you should get, instead of just the arrow, you'll get a little bone tool. Now that's going to let you identify which part of the body you want to move. So if it was just the hand, we could grab it like this. If I wanted to go deeper into the structure, I can identify the whole hand, so she can do some semaphore for me. Or if I just wanted to take the little hand itself, I just identify that. So let's make her move like this, and then come back down again. And then we can make any part of her body move as well. So make her do any sort of movement. So we'll get her to do a little balancing act. And there she is over time. Now, of course, that's editing in the symbol. So I need to come out onto the stage, and she'll be doing that on this single frame. So I need to decide how long the animation is, what else is going to happen, and so on. Now, another really interesting fact that you could factor in is that everything is editable. So if I wanted to change any of the elements or redraw this character, so I could use this to start with, and then I could go into the character and replace everything. Now what I mean by that, well, if I double click on the character to go into symbol editing mode, I can also just keep double clicking to go into all the individual elements. So I can go into the arm, for instance, and if I decided to, I could change the color. And then, of course, that's all going to follow through into the animation. Now that gives you quite an exciting possibility with this, because you could use the rigging to create the animation, or use an existing animated rig on one of the characters, and then you could create your own drawing and go in and replace, or simply go in and redraw the character if you wanted to. You could also use photographic imagery or drawings that you've made in Illustrator or Photoshop. What you need to be careful of is that everything you want to use, so every single element that you're going to redraw, must be separated and must be completely an opaque object with transparency in the background. So if you have a background layer, even if it's switched off, get rid of it. If you have any background information on the layers, you must make sure that they're deleted or they'll all come through. Just make sure every element that you want to move is on a separate layer, and the same goes with Illustrator. And then you save it in Photoshop as a Photoshop document, Illustrator as Illustrator, and then you can import. So you could import to the library all of the segments that you need, and then you could go deep into the structure, decide you want to replace her face, and you could replace her face with your face, for instance. So that might be quite an interesting experiment to try. Could look hideous, but it could be very entertaining. Finally, I just want to show you one more static character called McBony Bones. If you've got kids, this is a must, or if you have adults who you want to entertain. So I'm going to put Boney up here. He doesn't do anything at the moment, but if I go to the animated section and look at the rigs, this is the front view of the skeleton, and I'm going to make sure I drop it onto the symbol. So I double click, drop it onto the symbol, and then of course you can play the animation. I added a sound effect so you can make it even more entertaining. Sound effects are very, very easy. Let's just find an appropriate place on the timeline to put in this sound effect, or something like that. So he might jump off. And I'm just going to drop the sound effect onto the stage. And so if I play it now, you'll see it will add that sound effect. Okay, and you just need to decide, maybe that wasn't the most appropriate place to put it, but you need to decide where that's going to go along the timeline. That's it. So there's lots of characters to just explore and play with. Maybe replace some of the elements, try out the rigging, try out controlling the static rig, and just experiment with that. Actually piecing together a rig yourself or working with parent and child is quite hard. You just need to have a bit of fun and explore first of all, and then also just learn the basics of animation.